You're forgetting important information, losing mental sharpness, and being forgotten by others, while certain people demonstrate extraordinary memory, retaining everything they learn, staying mentally sharp across lifespan, and making themselves unforgettable to everyone they meet. Recognizing that exceptional memory and mental sharpness are not genetic gifts or innate talents, but systematic habits developed through specific daily practices that anyone can implement. Knowing that strong memory creates compounding advantages through enabling faster learning, better decision making, deeper relationships, and professional success, because remembering information, people, and experiences makes you valuable expert and memorable person. Understanding that being mentally sharp means maintaining cognitive performance, avoiding decline, and processing information quickly, accurately, and effectively regardless of age or circumstances, and losing years of learning, relationships, and opportunities because poor memory prevents retaining valuable information, while being forgettable means people overlook you for opportunities, relationships, and recognition, making memory habit development absolutely essential for cognitive excellence and social success. This memory weakness is systematically limiting your success by preventing you from learning effectively, because forgetting most of what you study wastes time and prevents knowledge accumulation, damaging relationships, because forgetting names, faces, and conversations makes people feel unimportant and unmemorable, reducing professional effectiveness because inability to recall critical information undermines expertise and credibility, creating cognitive decline, anxiety as memory lapses increase, making you fear aging and mental deterioration, and ensuring you remain forgettable person whom others overlook because you make no lasting impression, creating missed opportunities and shallow connections, making memory habit development critical priority. Developing exceptional memory and becoming mentally sharp, unforgettable person is not about having photographic memory, which is rare and unnecessary, but about systematic habits that optimize encoding, storage, and retrieval of important information. Not about remembering everything, which would be overwhelming, but about remembering what matters most, and not mysterious talent, but learnable practices. This audiobook teaches 10 memory habits that make you mentally sharp and impossible to forget, including using spaced repetition for permanent retention, applying active recall, strengthening memory through retrieval, creating vivid mental associations, making information memorable, practicing focused attention during encoding, developing organizational systems, reducing cognitive load, maintaining physical health, supporting brain function, teaching others, reinforcing understanding, connecting new information to existing knowledge, implementing memory palace technique for complex information, and integrating all habits into comprehensive memory system, making you cognitively exceptional and personally unforgettable. Stop forgetting and being forgotten. Start developing extraordinary memory and becoming mentally sharp, unforgettable person. Master 10 habits systematically, practice deliberately, and become impossible to forget through unwavering commitment, starting now. Chapter 1. Habit 1. Use spaced repetition for permanent retention. Chapter 1 uses spaced repetition, creating permanent long-term memory retention through reviewing information at strategically increasing intervals. The spacing effect from memory research shows that distributed practice spread over time creates dramatically stronger, more durable memory than massed practice, where same total study time is concentrated in single session. That reviewing information at specific optimal intervals just before you would forget it maximizes retention efficiency, preventing both wasteful to frequent review and forgetting from too infrequent review. That spacing takes advantage of how memory consolidation works in brain, where repeated reactivation at intervals strengthens neural connections, creating permanent storage. That most people use massed practice cramming before tests, creating temporary memory that disappears within days or weeks, wasting study effort. And understanding that systematically using spaced repetition for all important information you want to remember permanently is absolutely essential first memory habit, because spacing is most powerful evidence-based technique for converting temporary memory into permanent knowledge, making spaced repetition foundational practice for exceptional memory. Use spaced repetition for permanent retention. Review at increasing intervals. Space systematically or forget rapidly. The forgetting curve discovered by Hermann Ebbinghaus demonstrates that newly learned information is forgotten rapidly, with memory declining to about 20% retention within days without review. That this forgetting follows predictable exponential decay curve, where most forgetting happens quickly after learning then gradually slows. That strategic review just before predicted forgetting point resets curve maintaining high retention, and that repeated reviews at increasing intervals eventually create permanent memory resistant to forgetting. Understanding forgetting curve reveals why single exposure or mass practice fails because information decays before consolidating into long-term memory, while spaced review interrupts decay, enabling consolidation. The optimal spacing intervals follow research-based schedule that balances retention with efficiency. Initial review should occur within 24 hours after first learning when forgetting begins. Second review happens after 2 to 3 days. Third review at 1 week. Fourth review at 2 weeks. Fifth review at 1 month. Sixth review at 3 months. Subsequent reviews at 6 months then yearly. These intervals represent approximate guidelines that should adjust based on material difficulty and personal retention, with harder information requiring more frequent review while easily remembered material can space further. The key principle is progressively increasing intervals where each successful recall enables longer wait before next review, creating efficient retention with minimum total review time. The spaced repetition systems implement optimal spacing through software applications or manual scheduling methods. Digital spaced repetition software like Anki automatically calculates optimal review timing based on your performance, showing you cards just before predicted forgetting, adjusting intervals based on whether you record successfully or struggled. Manual methods use physical flashcard boxes with sections for different review intervals, moving cards to later sections after successful recall. Both approaches work, but digital systems handle complexity and optimization automatically, making them more practical for large amounts of information. Choose system that you will actually use consistently, because perfect system used sporadically beats imperfect system used daily. The active information selection applies spaced repetition strategically to important information worth permanent retention, not everything you encounter. Trying to remember everything creates overwhelming review burden, leading to system abandonment. Instead, identify truly important information like key concepts in your field, professional knowledge you use regularly, names and details of important people, foreign language vocabulary, or skills requiring long-term retention. Apply rigorous selection criteria, asking, will I need this information long-term? Does this connect to my goals or work? And is this foundational knowledge building on itself? Selective application makes spaced repetition sustainable and effective. The encoding quality ensures initial learning is thorough before beginning spaced repetition schedule, because spacing only works on information initially encoded. During first encounter with information, use elaboration, creating meaningful connections, visualization, forming mental images, and self-explanation, ensuring understanding, not just surface familiarity. Quality encoding creates stronger initial memory trace that spaced repetition then strengthens and maintains over time. The review discipline maintains consistency following review schedule without procrastination or skipping sessions. Spaced repetition only works when you actually do reviews at scheduled times, because delayed reviews allow forgetting, defeating the purpose. Build review habit through scheduling specific daily time for reviews, treating reviews as non-negotiable appointments, starting with manageable amount of material, and using software reminders, preventing forgetting review sessions themselves. The progressive difficulty graduation eventually moves well-learned information to longer intervals or removes from active review once permanently retained. Not all information requires permanent active review. Some becomes so well known through repeated retrieval that review becomes unnecessary. Graduate information to longer intervals when recalling becomes effortless. Multiple times in row or archive information you have not forgotten in year of increasingly spaced reviews. The new information integration continuously adds important new information to spaced repetition system, maintaining growing knowledge base. As you learn new important information, immediately add to review system rather than waiting, creating backlog. Consistent addition combined with systematic review creates ever-expanding permanent knowledge base that compounds over years. The implementation requires learning spaced repetition principles, understanding how spacing prevents forgetting, selecting or creating spaced repetition system you will use consistently, applying spacing selectively to important information worth permanent retention, ensuring quality encoding during initial learning, maintaining review discipline following schedule without skipping, graduating well-learned information to longer intervals, continuously adding new important information to system, and treating spaced repetition as primary method for permanent retention where single exposure or must practice created temporary memory quickly forgotten, making systematic spacing essential first habit for exceptional memory. Use spaced repetition for permanent retention. Review at increasing intervals. Space systematically or forget rapidly. You understand now that spacing creates permanent memory while massing creates temporary, that optimal intervals prevent forgetting efficiently, that system implementation enables consistency, that selective application maintains sustainability, and that Chapter 1 provides spacing framework making permanent retention possible where forgetting curve guaranteed loss. Chapter 2. Habit 2. Apply active recall strengthening memory through retrieval. Chapter 2 applies active recall strengthening memory through retrieval practice rather than passive review. The testing effect from cognitive psychology shows that actively retrieving information from memory creates dramatically stronger learning than passively reviewing or rereading same material. That struggle and effort during retrieval attempt builds deeper neuroencoding even when retrieval fails, making difficult retrieval more beneficial than easy review. That testing is not just assessment, but powerful learning tool itself, creating knowledge, not merely measuring it, that most people avoid. Testing themselves, preferring passive rereading, which creates illusion of knowledge through familiarity without actual retention. And understanding that systematically using active recall through self-testing retrieval practice and forcing yourself to generate information from memory rather than passively recognizing it is essential second memory habit, because retrieval practice is most effective learning strategy for building strong accessible long-term memory, making active recall critical. Practice for exceptional cognitive performance. Practice active recall strengthening through retrieval. Test yourself frequently. Retrieve actively or review passively. The retrieval practice mechanism explains why active recall works through understanding that each successful retrieval strengthens neural pathways, making future retrieval easier and more reliable. That retrieval effort forces brain to reconstruct information from distributed memory traces, strengthening connections between related concepts. The generation attempting to produce answer yourself creates deeper processing than recognition, selecting from provided options, and that retrieval practice reveals what you actually know versus what you merely recognize, creating accurate self-assessment. Passive review like rereading creates false confidence, because information seems familiar when present, but familiarity does not guarantee ability to recall when needed, making retrieval practice essential for identifying and fixing knowledge gaps. The desirable difficulty principle shows that retrieval should be challenging, requiring effort and struggle, because difficulty during practice paradoxically improves long-term retention despite making learning feel harder and slower in moment. Easy retrieval where answers come immediately provides minimal learning benefit because brain is not challenged to strengthen connections. Difficult retrieval where you must struggle to remember or even fail initially, then check answer, creates strongest learning through forcing effortful reconstruction. This means you should test yourself before feeling fully ready when retrieval is still difficult, not after material becomes easy through repeated exposure. Embrace struggle during retrieval, recognizing that difficulty signals learning is happening. The self-testing implementation creates regular retrieval practice through various methods depending on material and preference. Flashcards, whether physical or digital, force retrieval by showing question and requiring answer generation before revealing correct response. Practice problems in mathematics or sciences require applying concepts, generating solutions from memory. Free recall, writing everything you remember about topic without looking at notes, forces comprehensive retrieval. Practice teaching, explaining concepts to others, or imagining teaching, requiring retrieval and organization of knowledge. Self-quizzing, asking yourself questions about material you are learning. Any method that forces retrieving information from memory rather than passively reviewing provides active recall benefit. The timing strategy tests yourself at strategic moments, maximizing learning. Immediate testing right after initial learning while information is still accessible provides successful retrieval, strengthening initial encoding. Delayed testing hours or days later, when partial forgetting has occurred, creates more difficult but more beneficial retrieval, forcing reconstruction. Interleave testing, mixing different topics or concepts rather than blocking by type, creates additional difficulty and better learning. Space testing attempts over time, combining active recall with spaced repetition for maximum retention. The feedback integration checks answers after retrieval attempts, correcting errors and filling gaps. Testing without feedback allows errors to persist, while testing with immediate feedback enables correction. After attempting retrieval, always verify answer, identifying what you recalled correctly and what you missed or got wrong. For incorrect or incomplete recall, study correct answer understanding why you struggled, then test again later. Feedback converts retrieval practice from mere assessment into powerful learning tool. The elaborative retrieval goes beyond simple recall, asking yourself to explain why answer is correct, how concepts relate, or what examples illustrate ideas, forcing deeper processing. Instead of just retrieving fact, retrieve explanation, application, or connection. Instead of recalling that spaced repetition works, ask yourself to explain mechanism and generate example of applying it. Elaborative retrieval creates richer, more connected memory networks than simple fact recall. The PI testing strategy tests yourself before studying new material, attempting to answer questions or solve problems you have not yet learned, forcing predictive thinking that creates better encoding when material is subsequently studied. PI testing, even when you cannot answer correctly, primes brain to notice and encode relevant information when encountered, creating superior learning compared to studying first then testing. The application practice retrieves knowledge in realistic contexts where you will need to use it, not just isolated study sessions. If learning language, practice retrieving vocabulary and grammar during actual conversation attempts. If learning professional knowledge, practice retrieval while doing work, not just during study. Application retrieval ensures knowledge is accessible in contexts where needed, not just during formal study. The progressive difficulty increases retrieval challenge over time, starting with easier CUED recall with hints or multiple choices, then advancing to harder free recall, generating complete answers without any cues, building increasingly strong memory through progressively challenging retrieval. The implementation requires using active recall as primary learning method, not passive review. Testing yourself regularly on material you are learning. Embracing difficulty during retrieval, recognizing struggle builds memory. Checking answers after attempts, correcting errors and filling gaps. Applying elaborative retrieval, explaining and connecting, not just recalling facts. PI testing before studying new material. Practicing retrieval in realistic application contexts progressively. Increasing retrieval difficulty over time and treating active recall as most powerful learning strategy, where passive rereading created illusion of knowledge without actual retention, making retrieval practice essential second habit for exceptional memory. Practice active recall, strengthening through retrieval. Test yourself frequently. Retrieve actively or review passively. You understand now that retrieval strengthens memory more than review, that difficulty during retrieval creates learning, that testing is learning, not just assessment, that feedback enables correction, and that Chapter 2 provides active recall framework, making strong memory possible where passive study created weak retention. Chapter 3. Habit 3. Create vivid mental associations, making information memorable. Chapter 3 creates vivid mental associations, transforming abstract, difficult to remember information into concrete, memorable images and stories. The imagery advantage from dual coding theory shows that information encoded both verbally and visually creates two independent memory traces, making recall twice as likely compared to purely verbal encoding. That visual mental images are remembered far better than words alone because human memory evolved to remember visual, spatial information, not abstract symbols. That bizarre, unusual, exaggerated associations are most memorable because novelty captures attention and distinctive encoding prevents interference. That narrative structure, connecting information into coherent stories, provides organization and meaning that isolated facts lack. And understanding that deliberately creating vivid visual mental associations for abstract information you need to remember is essential third memory habit, because concrete memorable encoding is prerequisite for retention, making association creation critical technique for transforming forgettable information into unforgettable mental images. Create vivid mental associations, making memorable. Visualize, exaggerate, connect. Associate vividly or encode weakly. The visualization process converts abstract verbal information into concrete mental images that memory handles more naturally. When encountering abstract concept, name or fact, immediately pause and create mental picture representing that information. Make image as specific and detailed as possible, because vague general images provide weak memory cues while specific detailed images enable reliable retrieval. For abstract concepts, use metaphor or symbol, like visualizing freedom as breaking chains or justice as balanced scales. For names, connect a visual characteristic, like person with name, Rose holding rose, or Frank looking frank and honest. For numbers, use shapes or objects associated with each digit, like 1 as pencil, 2 as swan, creating visual number images. The exaggeration and bizarreness principles make associations more memorable through violating expectations and creating emotional response. Normal mundane associations, like remembering scientists by picturing them in lab coat, are quickly forgotten because they blend with countless similar memories. Bizarre exaggerated associations like imagining scientist 50 feet tall juggling test tubes while riding unicycle are unforgettable because novelty and unusualness create distinctive encoding, preventing interference from similar memories. Make associations absurd, impossible, humorous, or emotionally evocative. Exaggerate size, making things enormous or tiny. Add unexpected action or interaction. Combine incompatible elements. Violate physical laws. The stranger and more vivid the association, the better memory will be. The interaction and connection between elements creates stronger associations than isolated static images. When creating association for two pieces of information, make them interact dynamically rather than appearing separately in mental scene. If remembering person named Baker works, Baker imagine them covered in flour, actively baking huge wedding cake, not just standing near oven. Action and interaction create richer encoding with more retrieval cues than static isolated images. Connect elements directly through contact, physical interaction, or causal relationship, creating unified, memorable scene. The personal and emotional connection enhances memory through tying information to yourself or emotional experiences. First-person perspective, where you are active participant in mental image, creates stronger memory than third-person observation. Emotional content, whether positive or negative, increases memorability through amygdala involvement in emotional memory formation. When creating associations, insert yourself into scene, imagine touching, feeling, or experiencing elements, add emotional elements like humor, fear, or excitement, creating personally relevant emotional encoding. The location and spatial context leverage strong human spatial memory by placing information at specific locations in familiar environment. Method of loci or memory palace technique uses this by associating information with locations in mental journey through familiar place but simpler location association. Also helps by placing each piece of information in distinct spatial location within mental scene, giving each element its own space, making it easier to retrieve individually. The multi-sensory encoding adds sound, smells, tastes, or tactile sensations to visual images, creating richer memory traces. When visualizing association, add sensory details like sound of action, smell of object, taste if relevant, or texture if touching, creating multimodal encoding that provides multiple retrieval pathways. More senses involved in encoding creates stronger, more accessible memory. The story narrative organizes multiple pieces of information into coherent sequence with causal connections and logical flow, making complex information easier to remember. Instead of creating isolated associations for each item, create story-linking items sequentially, where each triggers next through narrative connection. Story structure provides retrieval path where remembering beginning enables recalling middle then end through narrative chain. Make story bizarre and vivid, applying exaggeration and unusualness principles to story elements while maintaining logical flow. The practice and automaticity develops association creation skill through repeated application, making visualization automatic, fast, effortless habit rather than slow, deliberate process. Initially, creating vivid associations requires conscious effort and time, but with practice becomes rapid, automatic response to information you want to remember, taking seconds to generate effective association. Practice by creating associations for everything you want to remember, starting with easier, concrete information, then advancing to more abstract concepts, building skill over time. The implementation requires converting abstract information to concrete visual mental images, making associations bizarre, exaggerated, and unusual, creating interaction and connection between elements, adding personal emotional elements, using spatial context and location, engaging multiple senses beyond vision, organizing complex information into narrative stories, practicing association creation until automatic, and treating vivid associations as transforming forgettable abstract information into memorable concrete images, where purely verbal learning created weak, unmemorable encoding, making association creation essential third habit for exceptional memory. Create vivid mental associations, making memorable. Visualize, exaggerate, connect. Associate vividly or encode weakly. You understand now that visual encoding beats verbal, that bizarre associations are most memorable, that interaction strengthens connections, that personal emotional content enhances memory, and that Chapter 3 provides association framework, making abstract information memorable, where weak encoding created forgetting. Chapter 4. Habit for practice focused attention during encoding. Chapter 4 practices focused attention during initial encoding because memory formation requires concentrated awareness and distraction prevents information from entering memory at all. The attention requirement from cognitive neuroscience shows that working memory has severely limited capacity processing only a small amount of information at once, making divided attention impossible. That multitasking is myth where attention actually switches rapidly between tasks, performing each poorly rather than doing multiple tasks simultaneously. That distraction during learning prevents encoding into long-term memory, making information never truly learned regardless of time spent. That brain can only encode information into memory when attention is directed toward it, meaning divided attention equals no attention for memory purposes. And understanding that practicing focused single-tasking attention during learning, eliminating all distractions, and intentionally deciding to remember information is essential for memory habit. Because attention is absolute prerequisite for encoding, making focus non-negotiable foundation for memory formation, where distracted learning wastes time. Creating no retention. Focus attention completely during encoding. Eliminate all distractions. Attend fully or fail to encode. The single-tasking requirement eliminates divided attention through doing one thing at a time with complete focus. Close all browser tabs except what you are studying. Silence phone and place out of sight. Turn off notifications. Close email. Eliminate background music with lyrics. Remove visual distractions from environment. Work in quiet distraction-free space. Inform others you are not available. Single-tasking feels slower and less productive than multitasking because you cannot create illusion of busyness handling multiple things simultaneously, but focused single-tasking produces far superior results through actually encoding information into memory, while multitasking creates appearance of productivity with no actual learning or retention. The environmental control creates physical space optimized for focused attention. Dedicated study space separated from entertainment or relaxation areas signals brain to focus. Clean, uncluttered workspace prevents visual distraction. Good lighting reduces eye strain, maintaining attention. Comfortable temperature prevents physical discomfort that divides attention. Ergonomic seating enables sustained focus without pain. Door closed or privacy signal prevents interruptions. Consistent location builds conditioned focus association, where entering space triggers focus state. Design environment deliberately to support rather than undermine attention. The attention hygiene practices maintain focus over extended periods, preventing attention drift. Pomodoro technique works in focused 25-minute blocks followed by 5-minute breaks, maintaining fresh attention through regular renewal, preventing fatigue and mind wandering. Break complex tasks into smaller focused chunks, making sustained attention more achievable. Set clear goal for each focus session, knowing exactly what you will accomplish. Begin session with brief meditation or breathing exercise, clearing mind and centering attention. Note distracting thoughts on paper to address later rather than pursuing them immediately, maintaining focus on current task. The intentional encoding makes conscious decision to remember information rather than passively hoping memory happens automatically. Before learning, ask yourself, what specifically do I want to remember from this material, creating explicit memory goal. Tell yourself, I am going to remember this, creating intentional encoding mindset. Preview material, identifying what seems important, priming attention toward key information. Pause, periodically asking what have I learned so far, forcing attention toward retention, not just completion. Intentional encoding transforms learning from passive exposure to deliberate memorization. The deep processing focuses on meaning, relationships, and understanding rather than surface features, creating stronger memory. Levels of processing theory shows that shallow processing focusing on appearance or sound creates weak memory, while deep processing focusing on meaning creates strong memory. Ask questions while learning, like, why is this true? How does this relate to what I know? What are examples? What are implications? Forcing deep semantic processing. Explain information in your own words. Generate examples. Make connections. Contrast with alternatives. Deep processing requires more attention, but creates far better memory than shallow surface processing. The curiosity activation increases attention through making material interesting and personally relevant. Brain pays more attention to information perceived as interesting or useful, making curiosity a powerful attention tool. Before learning, activate curiosity by asking questions you want answered, identifying how material relates to your goals, finding personally relevant aspects, or challenging yourself to find interesting elements. Curiosity naturally sustains attention, while boredom invites distraction. The attention monitoring catches mind wandering immediately through metacognitive awareness of attention state. Notice when attention drifts from material to thoughts about lunch plans or conversations, redirecting immediately back to learning. Develop habit of checking, am I paying attention right now, every few minutes, catching drift early. Mind wandering is normal, but catching and correcting it quickly minimizes encoding loss. The technology management prevents digital distraction through deliberate device control. Use website blockers, preventing access to distracting sites during study. Delete distracting apps from phone during learning periods. Use Do Not Disturb mode. Consider phone in different room entirely. Use single-purpose device for learning without entertainment access. Technology offers unprecedented learning resources, but also unprecedented distraction requiring deliberate management. The physical state optimization ensures physiology supports attention through adequate sleep, preventing fatigue, exercise increasing alertness, proper nutrition maintaining stable blood sugar, and hydration supporting brain function. Attention depends on physical state, making self-care attention supporting practice. The implementation requires practicing focus, single tasking, eliminating multitasking, controlling environment to remove distractions, maintaining attention hygiene through breaks and structure, encoding intentionally with conscious memory goal, processing information deeply for meaning, activating curiosity, making material engaging, monitoring attention, catching mind wandering, managing technology, preventing digital distraction, optimizing physical state through sleep, exercise, nutrition, and treating focused attention as absolute encoding prerequisite, where distracted learning prevented memory formation regardless of time spent, making attention essential. Fourth habit for exceptional memory. Focus attention completely during encoding. Eliminate all distractions. Attend fully or fail to encode. You understand now that memory requires focused attention, that multitasking prevents encoding, that environment affects focus, that intentional encoding improves retention, and that Chapter 4 provides attention framework, making encoding possible where distraction prevented memory formation. Chapter 5. Habit 5. Develop organizational systems reducing cognitive load. Chapter 5 develops organizational systems reducing cognitive load through external memory aids that capture, store, and retrieve information reliably. The external memory principle shows that trying to remember everything mentally exhausts limited cognitive capacity, creating stress and inevitable forgetting, while organizational systems offload routine information to external reliable storage, freeing mental resources for higher-level thinking. That human working memory capacity is severely limited to about 7 items, making mental tracking of appointments, tasks, deadlines, and information impossible beyond tiny amount. That external systems prevent forgetting through reliable capture and retrieval, eliminating dependence on fallible biological memory. That most people waste enormous mental energy trying to remember routine information that should be externalized, creating constant low-level anxiety about forgetting. And understanding that systematically developing organizational capture and retrieval systems for routine information you need to track is essential. Fifth memory habit, because external systems reduce cognitive load. Eliminate forgetting anxiety and free mental capacity for important thinking, making organization critical infrastructure for mental performance. Build organizational systems reducing cognitive load. Externalize, capture, automate. Organize systematically or overload mentally. The capture systems record information immediately at point of encounter, preventing loss before transfer to memory. Universal capture tool with a physical notebook or digital app must be always available, enabling recording any important information, thoughts, tasks, or commitments instantly without delay. Capture everything principle means writing down all potentially important information rather than trying to judge in moment what deserves recording, because forgetting important item once costs more than capturing 100 unimportant items. Immediate capture at moment of encounter prevents forgetting that happens within seconds when relying on memory to transfer information later. Process captured information regularly, moving items to appropriate systems rather than leaving everything in capture tool. The task management system tracks all commitments and to-do items, ensuring nothing falls through cracks. Task list organized by project or context captures every commitment from major projects to small errands. Next action clarity identifies specific concrete next step for each task, preventing vague intentions. Review system includes daily review of today's tasks and weekly review of all commitments, ensuring nothing forgotten. Priority system identifies most important tasks, preventing less important items from crowding out critical work. Completion tracking provides satisfaction and progress visibility, maintaining motivation. The calendar system schedules time-bound commitments, appointments, deadlines, and events, providing external memory for temporal information. Single authoritative calendar holds all commitments, preventing conflicts from maintaining multiple calendars. Time blocking schedules focused work sessions, treating deep work as important as meetings. Buffer time between appointments prevents optimistic scheduling. Regular review prevents surprises from forgotten commitments. Reminders provide advance notice, enabling preparation. The reference system organizes information you might need later, enabling reliable retrieval. Physical filing for paper documents uses clear categories and labeling. Digital filing organizes computer files in logical folder structure. Note-taking system captures important information from meetings, reading, or thinking for future reference. Cloud storage enables access across devices. Search functionality enables finding information quickly. Regular cleanup prevents overwhelming accumulation. The automation eliminates recurring decisions and tasks through systems that run automatically. Autopay for bills prevents missed payments. Standing orders for recurring purchases. Templates for frequent communications. Checklists for routine processes. Habits for daily recurring actions. Automation eliminates cognitive load from remembering and deciding repeatedly for routine matters. The standardization creates consistent methods for handling common situations, eliminating repeated decision-making. Standard location for frequently used items like keys, wallet, phone. Standard process for morning routine. Standard template for emails or documents. Standard meeting format. Standardization turns decisions into automatic procedures, freeing mental energy. The delegation and outsourcing transfers tasks to others or services when appropriate. Tasks that others can do better or cheaper should be delegated, freeing your cognitive capacity for highest value activities. Outsource routine tasks consuming time, but providing little value. Automate through services what can run without human involvement. The periodic review maintains system effectiveness through regular examination and cleanup. Weekly review processes captured items, ensures nothing forgotten and systems current. Monthly review evaluates system effectiveness, identifying improvements. Annual review redesigns systems based on changed needs. Review prevents system degradation and ensures continued reliability. The minimal viable system starts simple and expands gradually, avoiding overwhelming complexity. Begin with basic task list and calendar. Add components as needed. Resist temptation to create elaborate systems initially because complex systems become burdensome and abandoned. Simple systems used consistently beat perfect systems used sporadically. The single source of truth consolidates information in one authoritative location, preventing confusion from multiple conflicting versions. One task list, not several. One calendar, not multiple. One note system, not scattered notes. Consolidation enables reliable retrieval and prevents information loss. The implementation requires building universal capture system, recording information immediately, developing task management, tracking all commitments, maintaining authoritative calendar for time-bound items, organizing reference system for information retrieval, automating recurring decisions and tasks, standardizing common processes and locations, delegating and outsourcing when appropriate, reviewing systems periodically, maintaining effectiveness, starting simple, expanding gradually, consolidating information in single sources, and treating organizational systems as essential. Cognitive load reduction, where mental tracking of everything exhausted capacity, created stress and forgetting, making external systems essential. Fifth habit for mental performance. Build organizational systems, reducing cognitive load. Externalize, capture, automate. Organize systematically or overload mentally. You understand now that external systems free mental capacity, that capture prevents forgetting, that organization enables retrieval, that automation eliminates recurring decisions, and that Chapter 5 provides organization framework, making cognitive load reduction possible where mental tracking created overwhelm. Chapter 6. Habit 6. Maintain physical health, supporting brain function. Chapter 6 maintains physical health, supporting optimal brain function, memory, and cognitive performance. The brain-body connection from neuroscience shows that brain is physical organ whose performance depends entirely on physiological conditions, meaning physical health determines cognitive capability. that exercise, sleep, and nutrition directly affect memory formation, consolidation, and retrieval through biological mechanisms, that physical neglect guarantees cognitive decline and memory impairment regardless of mental techniques through depriving brain of necessary biological support, that attempting to optimize memory without addressing physical foundation is futile, like trying to run high-performance engine on bad fuel in poor conditions, and understanding that prioritizing physical health through regular exercise, adequate quality sleep, and brain-healthy nutrition as non-negotiable foundations is essential. Sixth memory habit. Because physical state provides biological substrate, enabling or preventing cognitive performance, making physical self-care prerequisite, not optional. Enhancement for exceptional memory. Maintain physical health supporting brain function. Exercise, sleep, eat well. Strengthen physically or decline cognitively. The exercise benefit creates direct memory enhancement through multiple biological mechanisms. Aerobic exercise increases brain-derived neurotrophic factor BDNF, which promotes neurogenesis, growth of new neurons, particularly in hippocampus, critical for memory formation. Exercise increases cerebral blood flow, delivering oxygen and nutrients, supporting brain function. Physical activity reduces inflammation and oxidative stress that damage brain tissue. Exercise promotes neuroplasticity, brain's ability to form new connections essential for learning. Immediate exercise benefits include improved focus and mood, supporting encoding, while long-term regular exercise prevents cognitive decline and enhances memory capacity. Aim for minimum 150 minutes moderate aerobic exercise weekly, with additional benefits from higher amounts. Strength training also provides cognitive benefits. Exercise immediately before or after learning enhances memory for that material through BDNF elevation. The sleep requirement enables memory consolidation through processes that occur only during sleep, making adequate sleep absolute memory prerequisite. During sleep, particularly slow-wave deep sleep and REM rapid eye movement sleep, brain replays and consolidates memories, transferring information from temporary hippocampal storage to permanent cortical storage. Sleep deprivation below 7 hours nightly prevents this consolidation, causing newly learned information to be lost. Sleep also clears metabolic waste products that accumulate during waking hours, including amyloid beta proteins associated with Alzheimer's disease. Chronic sleep deprivation creates cumulative cognitive deficit that undermines all memory efforts. Prioritize 7 to 9 hours quality sleep nightly through consistent sleep schedule, dark, quiet, cool bedroom, avoiding screens before bed, and treating sleep as non-negotiable biological necessity, not optional luxury. The nutrition quality provides brain fuel and building blocks through food, supporting cognitive function. Brain consumes 20% of body's energy despite being only 2% of weight, making stable blood sugar critical for cognitive performance. Complex carbohydrates provide steady glucose, while refined sugars create energy crashes. Omega-3 fatty acids, particularly DHA, are essential for brain structure and function, with deficiency impairing memory. Antioxidants from colorful fruits and vegetables protect brain from oxidative damage. B vitamins, particularly B12, folate, and B6, support neurotransmitter production and cognitive function. Hydration affects cognitive performance, with dehydration impairing concentration and memory. Eat diet rich in vegetables, fruits, whole grains, fish, nuts, and healthy fats, while limiting processed foods, added sugars, and excessive alcohol that impair cognitive function. The inflammation reduction prevents chronic inflammation that damages brain tissue and impairs memory. Anti-inflammatory diet emphasizes whole foods, omega-3 fatty acids, and antioxidants, while avoiding processed food, sugar, and unhealthy fats. Regular exercise reduces inflammation. Adequate sleep prevents inflammatory response from sleep deprivation. Stress management prevents stress-induced inflammation. Maintaining healthy weight reduces inflammation from excess body fat. The stress management prevents chronic stress hormone elevation that damages hippocampus and impairs memory formation. Chronic cortisol elevation from unmanaged stress literally shrinks hippocampus, reducing memory capacity. Stress management through exercise, meditation, deep breathing, social connection, and work-life balance protects brain structure and function. Acute stress can enhance memory through arousal, but chronic stress devastates it. The stimulant moderation limits caffeine and other stimulants that can impair sleep quality. Moderate caffeine consumption up to about 400 milligrams daily may provide cognitive benefits, but excessive use or consumption late in day disrupts sleep, undermining memory consolidation. Avoid caffeine after early afternoon to prevent sleep interference. The alcohol limitation recognizes that alcohol impairs memory formation and sleep quality. Heavy drinking causes lasting cognitive impairment and brain damage. Even moderate drinking can impair memory and sleep. If consuming alcohol, do so in moderation and never when trying to learn or remember important information. The cardiovascular health maintenance supports brain function through ensuring adequate blood flow. High blood pressure, diabetes, and cardiovascular disease reduce cerebral blood flow, impairing cognitive function. Maintain cardiovascular health through exercise, healthy diet, weight management, and medical treatment of conditions affecting circulation. The cognitive reserve building through physical health creates resilience against age-related decline. Higher fitness levels predict better cognitive function in aging. Regular exercise throughout life builds cognitive reserve, protecting against dementia and memory loss in later years. The implementation requires exercising regularly, minimum 150 minutes weekly for brain health, prioritizing 7 to 9 hours quality sleep nightly for consolidation, eating brain-healthy diet rich in whole foods, omega-3s, and antioxidants, reducing chronic inflammation through diet, exercise, and stress management, managing stress, preventing cortisol damage to hippocampus, moderating stimulants, particularly caffeine after afternoon, limiting or avoiding alcohol that impairs memory, and sleep, maintaining cardiovascular health, supporting cerebral blood flow, building cognitive reserve through lifelong physical activity, and treating physical health as essential memory foundation, where physical neglect guaranteed cognitive impairment regardless of mental techniques, making physical self-care essential. Sixth habit for exceptional memory. Maintain physical health, supporting brain function. Exercise, sleep, eat well, strengthen physically or decline cognitively. You understand now that physical health determines cognitive capability, that exercise increases BDNF and neurogenesis, that sleep enables consolidation, that nutrition provides brain fuel, and that Chapter 6 provides physical foundation, making optimal brain function possible where neglect undermined memory. Chapter 7. Habit 7. Teach others, reinforcing your understanding. Chapter 7 teaches others, reinforcing understanding and memory through explanation and instruction. The teaching effect from educational psychology shows that teaching or explaining information to others forces deeper understanding than learning for yourself alone, because teaching requires organizing knowledge coherently, identifying core concepts, and explaining clearly in ways that passive study does not demand. That preparing to teach activates elaborative encoding, connecting ideas, clarifying relationships, and identifying gaps in understanding. That explaining reveals what you truly understand versus what you only think you know, exposing misconceptions and incomplete knowledge that go unnoticed during passive learning. That teaching creates additional memory retrieval practice, strengthening retention through active recall during explanation. And understanding that regularly teaching, explaining, or discussing what you learn with others is essential. Seventh memory habit. Because teaching is ultimate test and strengthener of understanding, creating deep permanent memory where passive learning created shallow, fragile knowledge, making teaching powerful learning accelerator. Teach others, reinforcing understanding and memory. Explain clearly, frequently. Teach actively or learn passively. The explanation requirement forces clear understanding through demanding that you articulate concepts in coherent, organized manner. When learning for yourself alone, you can maintain vague, fuzzy understanding that feels adequate because you never tested through explanation. Teaching requires precision, clarity, and organization because confused explanation reveals confused understanding. Prepare to teach by organizing information into logical structure, identifying main points, and supporting details, determining what to emphasize and what to omit, creating coherent narrative that builds understanding progressively. This preparation process itself creates deep encoding through forcing analytical thinking about material structure and relationships. The gap identification reveals misunderstanding through teaching process, exposing what you do not fully grasp. When explaining to someone and they ask clarifying question you cannot answer, you discover knowledge gap. When your explanation feels awkward or unclear, you recognize incomplete understanding. When you struggle to provide examples or applications, you realize surface learning. These gaps go unnoticed during passive study because you never test understanding against external reality. Teaching makes gaps painfully obvious, creating opportunity to fill them. After teaching, note questions you could not answer, concepts you explained poorly, and areas that felt uncertain, then study those specifically, closing gaps. The retention improvement occurs through teaching functioning as active retrieval practice, strengthening memory. Explaining information requires retrieving it from memory, organizing it coherently, and presenting it, creating powerful learning through retrieval effort. Each time you teach same material, you strengthen memory through additional retrieval practice. Teaching multiple students or groups creates multiple retrieval opportunities, compounding retention benefits. Even teaching same person multiple times over spaced intervals combines teaching effect with spaced repetition for maximum retention. The audience adaptation deepens understanding through requiring translation of concepts into terms appropriate for audience level. Explaining to novice forces you to identify fundamental principles, remove jargon, and use simple, clear language. Explaining to expert requires precision, addressing nuances and anticipating sophisticated questions. Explaining to different audiences forces multiple perspectives on material, creating richer, more flexible understanding than single viewpoint study. The elaboration through teaching adds details, examples, and connections, enhancing memory. While teaching, you naturally elaborate, adding examples to clarify concepts, drawing connections to other topics, providing analogies, making abstract ideas concrete, and explaining why things work, creating elaborative encoding that strengthens memory far beyond bare facts. The teaching opportunities exist everywhere, not requiring formal classroom settings. Explain what you are learning to friends, family, or colleagues. Join or create study groups where members teach each other. Write blog posts or social media content explaining concepts. Record videos teaching material. Answer questions in online forums. Tutor others in subjects you know. Participate in discussions contributing explanations. Every explanation is teaching opportunity, providing learning benefit. The rubber duck debugging technique uses teaching even without audience by explaining concepts aloud to inanimate object like rubber duck. Programmers use this technique to find bugs by explaining code line by line to rubber duck, often discovering problem during explanation. Apply same principle to any learning by explaining material aloud even when alone. Articulating explanation creates many teaching benefits even without listener. The self-explanation while studying approximates teaching by continuously explaining material to yourself as you learn. While reading, pause frequently and explain what you just read in your own words. When encountering concept, ask yourself, how would I teach this to someone? Generate examples and non-examples. Explain why something is true and what would happen if it were different. Self-explanation creates teaching-like benefits during initial study. The question anticipation improves teaching by predicting what questions students might ask, forcing you to think deeply about potential confusions and alternative perspectives. Before teaching, consider what might be unclear, what common misconceptions exist, what questions might arise, and what explanations or examples would address those issues. Anticipating questions creates deeper understanding than simply preparing content. The feedback integration uses student questions and confusion to identify areas needing better understanding. When student seems confused or asked question, you cannot answer, immediately recognize that as valuable feedback about gap in your knowledge. Note these moments and study those areas, specifically using teaching as diagnostic tool, revealing what needs improvement. The regular teaching practice makes teaching ongoing habit, not occasional activity. Commit to teaching what you learn regularly through sharing with study partner, explaining to family at dinner, writing weekly blog post, or other consistent teaching outlet. Regular teaching builds skill at explanation while providing continuous learning benefit through repeated retrieval and elaboration. The implementation requires teaching or explaining what you learn to others regularly. Preparing to teach by organizing information coherently, using teaching to identify and fill knowledge gaps, adapting explanations to different audiences, building flexible understanding, elaborating through examples and connections while teaching, seeking or creating teaching opportunities in daily life, using rubber duck or self-explanation techniques even without audience, anticipating student questions, forcing deep thinking, integrating feedback from teaching to improve understanding, making teaching regular ongoing practice, and treating teaching as ultimate learning reinforcement, creating deep permanent memory where passive study alone created shallow retention, making teaching essential. Seventh habit for exceptional memory. Teach others, reinforcing understanding and memory. Explain clearly frequently. Teach actively or learn passively. You understand now that teaching forces clear understanding, that explanation reveals gaps, that teaching provides retrieval practice, that audience adaptation deepens knowledge, and that Chapter 7 provides teaching framework, making deep learning possible where passive study created surface knowledge. Chapter 8. Habit 8. Connect new information to existing knowledge. Chapter 8 connects new information to existing knowledge, building integrated memory networks rather than isolated facts. The elaboration principle from memory research shows that connecting new information to what you already know creates dramatically stronger memory than learning isolated, disconnected facts, because connections provide multiple retrieval pathways, making information accessible through many routes. That isolated information is forgotten rapidly, while richly connected information persists because connections anchor new learning to stable existing memory networks. That meaningful connections based on understanding relationships create stronger memory than superficial connections based on surface features. That expert knowledge consists not of isolated facts, but richly interconnected networks, where each piece connects to many others, creating web of understanding. And understanding that deliberately connecting every new piece of information to your existing knowledge, through asking how this relates to what I know and creating meaningful links, is essential eighth memory habit, because connection transforms fragile, isolated learning into robust, integrated knowledge, making elaborative connection critical practice for building permanent, comprehensive understanding. Connect new information to existing knowledge. Link meaningfully always. Integrate systematically or isolate information. The prior knowledge activation recalls related information before learning new material, priming brain to recognize and encode connections. Before studying new topics, spend few minutes recalling what you already know about subject. Ask yourself, what do I already know that relates to this? What have I learned previously that might connect? What experiences have I had that might be relevant? This activation brings existing knowledge to working memory, making connections obvious during learning. Without prior activation, you might miss connections because relevant existing knowledge remains dormant, unactivated. The meaningful link creation identifies genuine conceptual relationships between new and known information, creating understanding-based connections. Meaningful connections answer questions like, how does this relate to concepts I know? What similarities and differences exist? What are causes or effects linking these ideas? What examples from my experience illustrate this? How does this fit into larger framework I understand? These connections based on relationships, meaning, and understanding create far stronger memory than superficial connections based merely on surface similarity or arbitrary associations. Seek deep conceptual connections, not just surface resemblance. The schema integration builds new information into existing knowledge structures or schemas, creating organized hierarchical understanding. Schemas are organized frameworks of knowledge about topics like mental outline or map showing how ideas relate. Instead of adding isolated facts, identify where new information fits within existing schema. Is this subcategory of concept I know? New example of principle I understand? Exception to rule I learned? Alternative perspective on topic I studied? Or foundation for ideas I will learn? Fitting information into schema creates organized, integrated knowledge rather than disconnected collection of facts. The analogy and metaphor use familiar known concepts to understand new unfamiliar ideas, creating bridge from known to unknown. When encountering new concept, ask, what is this similar to that I already understand? Electrical current is like water flowing through pipes. Computer memory is like filing cabinet. Atoms are like solar systems. These analogies leverage existing knowledge, making new ideas immediately meaningful and memorable. Generate your own analogies based on your unique knowledge, creating personally relevant connections. The contrast and comparison identify similarities and differences between new information and related existing knowledge, clarifying both. When learning new concept, compare and contrast with similar concepts you know. How is classical conditioning similar to and different from operant conditioning? How does capitalism compare to socialism? What distinguishes mammals from reptiles? Comparison creates clarity and connection simultaneously. The example generation creates connection by linking abstract concepts to concrete personal experiences. For every abstract principle, concept, or idea, generate specific concrete example from your own life or imagination. If learning about cognitive biases, generate examples when you experienced each bias. If studying historical event, connect to current events or personal analogies. Personal examples create meaningful connections that abstract learning alone cannot achieve. The question asking during learning forces active connection seeking rather than passive reception. While learning, continuously ask, how does this connect to what I know? Why is this true based on what I understand? What would happen if this were different given my existing knowledge? How can I apply this to situations I face? Questions force elaborative thinking, creating connections that passive reading misses. The concept mapping or mind mapping visually represents connections between ideas, showing relationships explicitly. Create diagram with main concept in center and related ideas branching out, showing how they connect. Lines between ideas show relationships. Visual map makes connections explicit and memorable, while creating process reinforces understanding through having to identify and represent relationships. The progressive building recognizes that new learning builds on previous learning, creating cumulative connected knowledge. Each new topic should connect to recently learned information, creating continuous interconnected growth. When planning learning sequence, ensure later topics connect to earlier, creating natural progressive building, where each concept provides foundation for next. The multidirectional connection creates links from new to old and old to new, building bidirectional network. When learning new information, connect it forward to what you already know. Then go backward, updating your understanding of previous knowledge based on new information. How does this new concept change or enhance what I previously understood? Bidirectional connection creates richer network than one-way linking. The implementation requires activating prior knowledge before learning new material. Creating meaningful conceptual connections, not superficial links. Integrating new information into existing knowledge schemas. Using analogies and metaphors, leveraging familiar concepts. Contrasting and comparing with related known information. Generating concrete personal examples for abstract concepts. Asking questions, forcing connection, seeking during learning. Creating concept maps, visualizing. Relationships. Building progressively, ensuring new connects to recent. Creating bidirectional connections, enriching both new and old knowledge. And treating connection to existing knowledge as transforming isolated facts into integrated understanding, where disconnected learning created fragile forgotten information, making elaborative connection essential eighth habit for exceptional memory. Connect new information to existing knowledge. Link meaningfully always. Integrate systematically or isolate information. You understand now that connections create multiple retrieval pathways, that meaningful links strengthen memory, that schema integration organizes knowledge, that personal examples create relevance, and that Chapter 8 provides connection framework, making integrated understanding possible, where isolation created forgetting. Chapter 9. Habit 9. Implement memory palace technique for complex information. Chapter 9 implements memory palace technique using extraordinary spatial memory for retaining and retrieving complex information in specific order. The method of loci from ancient Greek and Roman rhetoric shows that human spatial memory is remarkably powerful, enabling us to remember locations and spatial layouts with exceptional detail and permanence, far exceeding memory for abstract verbal information. That placing information at specific memorable locations in familiar mental space creates strong retrieval cues, where mentally walking through space triggers recall of information placed at each location. That memory palace technique has been used for thousands of years by memory champions and scholars to remember vast amounts of complex information, like entire books, speeches, or knowledge systems. That spatial memory evolved to help humans navigate environments, making it fundamental cognitive capability everyone possesses regardless of general memory ability. And understanding that systematically creating mental palaces for complex information you need to remember in sequence is essential ninth memory habit, because spatial memory provides reliable structure for organizing and retrieving large amounts of ordered information, making memory palace powerful technique for complexity. Use memory palace for complex information. Place spatially, retrieve sequentially. Apply technique or struggle with complexity. The palace creation selects familiar physical location that you know extremely well and can visualize vividly as foundation for memory palace. Ideal palace is place you can mentally walk through in specific route, seeing distinct locations or stations along way. Your home works perfectly with route through rooms and specific locations like fireplace, couch, desk, refrigerator, window. Workplace with cubicles, offices, conference rooms provides another option. Familiar route like daily commute with landmarks along way works. College campus, childhood home, or frequently visited location all serve as palaces. Choose location you know intimately, can visualize clearly, and has distinct memorable stations or locations along specific path. More distinct and memorable the locations, the better they serve as retrieval cues. The location selection identifies specific distinct stations or loci along route through mental palace where information will be placed. Locations should be clearly distinct from each other, positioned along logical route you can mentally walk, numerous enough to hold all information pieces you need to remember, and vivid enough to visualize clearly. In-home palace locations might be front door, coat rack, mirror, first stair, bedroom door, nightstand, window, closet, creating sequence of distinct places. Identify locations in advance before placing information, ensuring you have enough stations for all items to remember and can visualize each location clearly. The information placement associates each piece of information you want to remember with specific location in Palace through creating vivid, unusual, interactive mental image at that location. Using techniques from association habit, create bizarre, exaggerated image representing information, then place that image at first location in Palace. Move to second location and place second piece of information there with its own vivid image. Continue through all locations, placing one piece of information at each station. Make images at each location interact with location itself, not just appear there. If placing grocery item milk at refrigerator, visualize refrigerator exploding with milk flooding kitchen. Interaction between location and information creates stronger memory than separate static images. The sequential encoding places information in order from first location through last following logical route through Palace. This sequence creates ordered memory where mentally walking route retrieves information in correct order automatically. For unordered information like vocabulary words or fact sequence does not matter, but for speeches list of points or processes where order is critical, sequential placement in Palace preserves that order. The retrieval practice mentally walks through Palace from beginning to end, visiting each location in order, seeing vivid image placed there which triggers recall of information associated with that location. Regular retrieval practice strengthens Palace, strengthening associations between locations and information. After placing information in Palace, immediately do retrieval walk to test encoding. Practice retrieval spaced over time to maintain Palace long term. The multiple Palace creation develops different Palaces for different purposes when learning multiple sets of complex information. Using same Palace for different information creates interference where new images overwrite old. Create library of different Palaces using different familiar locations. Office for work information. Home for personal information. Childhood home for language vocabulary. Each Palace remains distinct, preventing interference. The image distinctiveness ensures each information piece has unique memorable image at its location, preventing confusion between similar items. Make images sufficiently bizarre and distinctive that each is unmistakable. Similar generic images create confusion, while unique unusual images remain distinct. The Palace maintenance requires occasional retrieval walks to keep Palace fresh and prevent decay. Long-established Palaces remain accessible for years, but benefit from periodic review. Palaces for temporary information can be cleared and reused for new information once old information is no longer needed. The application scope recognizes memory Palace excels for ordered information, lists, speeches, complex procedures, or knowledge requiring specific sequence, while other techniques work better for concepts requiring flexible retrieval from multiple angles. Use Palace when order matters and information complexity benefits from spatial organization. The skill development acknowledges that Palace technique improves with practice, becoming faster, easier, and more natural with experience. Initial Palace creation and use feels effortful and slow, but practice builds fluency, making technique quick automatic tool for complex information. The implementation requires selecting familiar location you know extremely well as mental Palace, identifying distinct memorable stations along logical route through location, placing each information piece at specific location through vivid, unusual interactive images, encoding information sequentially following route order, practicing retrieval by mentally walking through Palace seeing images, creating multiple different Palaces for different information sets, ensuring image distinctiveness, preventing confusion, maintaining Palaces through periodic retrieval practice, applying Palace technique to ordered complex information, developing skill through regular practice, and treating memory Palace as powerful technique for complexity and sequence, where linear memorization struggled with large ordered information sets, making spatial memory technique essential. Ninth habit for exceptional memory. Use memory Palace for complex information. Place facially, retrieve sequentially. Apply technique or struggle with complexity. You understand now that spatial memory is extraordinarily strong, that locations provide retrieval cues, that sequential placement preserves order, that vivid images strengthen associations, and that Chapter 9 provides memory Palace framework, making complex ordered retention possible where linear approaches failed. Chapter 10. Habit 10. Integrate all habits into comprehensive memory system. Chapter 10 integrates all 9 memory habits into comprehensive system, creating exceptional memory, cognitive performance, and unforgettable personal presence. The integration principle shows that individual memory habits practiced in isolation create meaningful but partial improvements, while comprehensive integration of all habits creates synergistic extraordinary memory that dramatically exceeds some of individual parts. That memory excellence requires systematic application across multiple dimensions simultaneously, including encoding, storage, retrieval, organization, and physical foundation, that each habit enhances effectiveness of others through complementary mechanisms, creating multiplication, not mere addition of benefits. That most people adopt one or two memory techniques, missing comprehensive approach required for truly exceptional performance. And understanding that integrating all 9 habits into daily systematic practice, creating complete memory architecture, is essential 10th and final memory habit, because only comprehensive integration creates the exceptional memory, mental sharpness, and unforgettable presence that makes you cognitively outstanding and personally memorable, making integration critical culmination of memory development. Integrate all habits into memory system. Combine comprehensively. Build complete system or remain partially effective. The system design maps how all 9 habits work together, creating coherent integrated approach. Spaced repetition from habit 1 provides schedule for permanent retention. Active recall from habit 2 provides retrieval practice during reviews. Vivid associations from habit 3 make initial encoding memorable. Focused attention from habit 4 ensures information enters memory. Organizational systems from habit 5 reduce cognitive load, enabling mental capacity for learning. Physical health from habit 6 provides biological foundation for brain function. Teaching from habit 7 reinforces understanding through explanation. Connecting to existing knowledge from habit 8 integrates new learning into networks. Memory Palace from habit 9 handles complex ordered information. Each habit supports and enhances others, creating system far more powerful than any individual technique. The daily practice routine integrates multiple habits into regular schedule. Morning review uses spaced repetition schedule, recalling previously learned information with active retrieval. Learning sessions apply focused attention, eliminating distractions while creating vivid associations for new information and connecting to existing knowledge. Afternoon physical activity provides exercise supporting brain function. Evening teaching session explains what you learned to someone or through self-explanation. Weekly organizational review maintains external systems. This integrated daily practice ensures all habits receive consistent application, building exceptional memory through comprehensive approach. The learning workflow applies relevant habits systematically to new information. Decide to remember information intentionally. Focus attention, completely eliminating distractions. Create vivid mental associations, making information memorable. Connect to existing knowledge, activating prior knowledge and identifying relationships. Capture important information in organizational system. Schedule spaced repetition reviews. Teach or explain information to others. Apply Memory Palace if information is complex and ordered. This workflow ensures comprehensive encoding and retention. The habit stacking builds new memory habits by attaching them to existing routines. After morning coffee, do spaced repetition review. During lunch walk, do active recall practice. Before bed, do organizational review. Stacking memory habits onto established routines creates automatic triggers, ensuring consistent practice. The progressive implementation introduces habits gradually, building sustainable system rather than attempting everything simultaneously. Begin with foundation habits 1 through 4 of spacing, attention, recall, and association. Add organizational systems and physical health. Incorporate teaching and connection. Finally, add Memory Palace for complex needs. Gradual implementation prevents overwhelm, ensuring each habit becomes established before adding next. The measurement and tracking monitors memory performance across time, showing improvement and identifying areas needing attention. Track retention rates using spaced repetition software. Note how many names you remember after meeting people. Test yourself on material learned weeks ago. Measure learning speed for new information. Tracking provides feedback showing that systematic practice works and identifies which habits need strengthening. The habit prioritization focuses effort on highest impact habits for your specific needs. Students might emphasize spaced repetition, active recall, and connection. Professionals networking might prioritize attention during conversations and teaching. Everyone benefits from physical health and organization. Prioritize based on goals while maintaining baseline practice across all habits. The adaptability adjusts approach based on material type and learning goals. Simple facts might need only spacing and recall. Complex concepts require all connection, teaching, and elaboration. Ordered information benefits from Palace. Adapt technique selection to match material while maintaining comprehensive overall practice. The lifelong commitment recognizes memory system continues evolving and improving throughout life. Neuroplasticity enables memory improvement at any age through consistent practice. Commit to ongoing habit practice, viewing memory development as permanent lifestyle, not temporary project. The implementation requires designing comprehensive system integrating all 9 memory habits, establishing daily practice routine, applying multiple habits consistently, creating learning workflow, ensuring systematic encoding, stacking memory habits onto existing routines, implementing progressively, building habits gradually, measuring and tracking performance, showing improvement, prioritizing habits based on personal needs and goals, adapting approach to different material types, committing to lifelong practice, treating memory as continuous development, and treating comprehensive integration as creating exceptional memory, mental sharpness, and unforgettable presence, where partial habit adoption created limited improvement, leaving memory mediocre, making complete integration essential. 10th habit for extraordinary memory. Integrate all habits into memory system. Combine comprehensively. Build complete system or remain partially effective. You have learned 10 memory habits that make you mentally sharp and impossible to forget. Habit 1. Using spaced repetition for permanent retention. Habit 2. Applying active recall, strengthening through retrieval. Habit 3. Creating vivid mental associations, making memorable. Habit 4. Practicing focused attention during encoding. Habit 5. Developing organizational systems, reducing load. Habit 6. Maintaining physical health, supporting brain. Habit 7. Teaching others, reinforcing understanding. Habit 8. Connecting to existing knowledge, building networks. Habit 9. Implementing memory palace for complexity. Habit 10. Integrating into comprehensive system. What matters now is implementing one habit today. 5 immediate priorities. Schedule spaced repetition review for one important piece of information. Test yourself actively on something you are currently learning. Create one vivid mental association for abstract information. Eliminate one distraction during next learning session. Capture one important piece of information in external organizational system. Start immediately. Practice consistently. Become mentally sharp and unforgettable. Stop forgetting and being forgotten. Start developing extraordinary memory, becoming mentally sharp, unforgettable person everyone remembers and admires. Practice habits systematically. Integrate comprehensively. And become impossible to forget through unwavering commitment, starting right now today.